One, two, three. 3, 2, 4.
Hello, I am Be Better Gamer. Welcome to Be Better Gamer Wrestling. This channel is dedicated to wrestling video games. Today I am bringing you a Let's Play of WWF No Mercy in the Tag Team Championship path. And I'm going to be playing as one of the greatest tag teams in WWE history, you could argue. And that's Edge and Christian, ENC. If this is your first time coming across my channel, thank you. Thank you for clicking on that video. If you haven't seen my Let's Plays before, I like to talk about the historical context, what was going on around the time in wrestling, in this case WWE, specifically when this game was developed, No Mercy coming out in November of 2000. So I usually like to focus on, when it comes to No Mercy, anywhere from like November 99 to November 2000. You know, obviously coming off of WrestleMania 2000 being released in 1999. But if you are a returning subscriber, yes, this is my first WWF No Mercy Let's Play in over 6 months or so, 7 months. My last Let's Play was in August, where I played as the APA Acolyte, not Acolyte. I mean, we all like the Acolytes. APA Acolyte Protection Agency. And I recently did a channel update video on Sunday, basically explaining, you know, how this is not going to happen anymore, where I do Let's Plays and then disappear, because now this is my full-time gig working on this channel. So I will be bringing you more consistent WWF No Mercy Let's Plays. I would have brought one last week. I would have done this last week, but last week my cartridge that I use for WWF No Mercy, all the save data got erased. So I did a video on that. It's on my channel. Luckily, I had already pre-recorded all the remaining tag team championship matches, or Let's Plays, or championship paths, I should just say. There was 4 more to go. You had to do them as champion, defending as champion. So I started with Edge and Christian, and I did 3 others. And I recorded the gameplay for all of them months and months ago, basically, because, you know, 6 months ago, after I did that APA one, I did plan on getting these out sooner rather than later. Obviously I couldn't because I had a job, but now I don't have a job, and now this is my job. So now I'm going to be bringing you Edge and Christian and the rest of the tag team Let's Plays. And then after that, I got the women's championship I'm going to do, and then the WWE championship that I'm going to do. So I just wanted to get that out of the way to let you know where I stand with the WWF No Mercy Let's Plays. I'm almost done with 100%ing the championship path. Obviously, now that I don't have all my original data on my N64, I'm using an EverDrive. This footage was captured on the N64 cartridge when I still had the data on it. But going forward, when I do the Women's Championship and I do the World Championship, I'm going to be using my EverDrive and starting from scratch. I didn't record any championship paths from the Women's or World before, so I didn't really lose anything there when I lost my save data. All I really lost was all the progress I had already made with all the Let's Plays I've uploaded on my channel. So the European Championship, the Light Heavyweight Championship, and the Hardcore Championship, and the Tag Team Championship, they were all 100% on that cartridge. Now it's all gone, but you know what? That just means I get to do it again. And maybe, you know, in the next coming month, maybe in February, I want to start streaming. So I'll probably start just streaming the Let's Play, the championship paths all over again. So that'll be cool to 100% that on my EverDrive, because I would like to 100% all the championship paths on my EverDrive. It'd be weird if I just have just the women's and the world's championship. You know, I gotta complete everything. I gotta be the No Mercy completionist over here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But with Edge and Christian, you know, I had to win the championships. Obviously, I won it with APA, but you have to start as champion to unlock the remaining 4 paths. All the other paths I had already done. You would do it as a new champion, so you can choose a new team each time. But with No Mercy, they also have the paths where you defend your championship. So you go into exhibition match, and you put the championship on the line, and you win with the team who you want to do it with. And I wanted to start with Edge and Christian because you have to win all the matches, number one, you know. And to me, Edge and Christian, you know, with these championship Let's Plays, these tag team Let's Plays, I've been talking about, you know, that trifecta of Edge and Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys. And if you look at Edge and Christian, they were sort of the focal point of all of that. And I've talked about this a lot in my previous, Let's Plays. So check out my Hardy Boys Let's Play and my Dudley Boys Let's Play. And I don't want to beat it to death. We all know a lot about these teams. We all know a lot about that feud. But I think it's interesting to look at some things because it's a nice little roadmap that whether it was planned or not, and you got to believe it wasn't really long-term plan, because when Edge and Christian and the Hardys had that ladder match, that Terry Invitational ladder match, and even they have spoken about it, it was their opportunity to go out there and shine and make a strong impact. But there wasn't really any long-term plans written out for them. There wasn't anything in the cards, if you will, long-term in WWE. So they knew they had to go out there and make an impact so that they can get noticed and move up in the card, and and it worked out for them. Obviously, they definitely did make an impact. We all remember that first ladder match. If you haven't seen it, because it did come out in 1999, No Mercy 1999, ironically enough, which is what the game takes after, is that pay-per-view, No Mercy. Watch it on the WWE Network. It still holds up, in my opinion. Their series of ladder matches, Edge and Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys, ladder matches, TLC matches. I kind of consider TLC matches ladder matches, but whatever. They all still hold up, in my opinion. And the main three, TLC matches and the ladder matches with the Hardy Boys before that, they all still hold up. So go watch them on the WWE Network. If you still haven't watched them, there's a reason why we all talk about them. There's a reason why people still remember that. If you look at Edge and Christian specifically, they won their first WWE Tag Team Championship at that very first TLC at WrestleMania 2000. Okay? And then they went on to win it a total of 7 times together. And they would lose, well, actually not lose, but they would win their last tag team championship together at WrestleMania 17, which was the second TLC ladder match. So the WrestleMania 2000 ladder match was actually a triangle ladder match. It wasn't the first TLC match. The first TLC match was SummerSlam. But they went from WrestleMania to WrestleMania, and within that period, they won the championship 7 times. And it was sort of this perfect bookend for something that really wasn't planned. You got to believe that going into No Mercy, and I'm sure Edge and Christian and Matt Hardy have probably even said this, but going into No Mercy, it probably wasn't booked. Yeah, WrestleMania 2000, you guys are going to have this great ladder match, and then at the next year, WrestleMania, we're going to follow it up with another TLC match, and that's going to be it. They were riding this wave of momentum, lightning in a bottle, as Stone Cold would say on his podcast. And when you go back and you look at it, it really is amazing how they were managed to squeeze all this stuff in basically like a year and a half to 2 years. Because Edge and Christian, they first got together as part of the Brood, and that was the coolest entrance in WrestleMania 2000. In WrestleMania 2000, I loved playing as the Brood, because when they would come out, that's when you had the full entrances still in that game. So they would come out, the music was awesome. Who didn't like the Brood music? Even if you didn't like the Brood as a team, you still love that entrance music. And in WrestleMania 2000, if you put the Titantron and the music as the Brood, so you will always come out with that entrance. So I used to have certain people pretend to be in the Brood just so they could come out in that entrance. But they got together in the Brood in 1998, and they were with Gangrel, pretty much unknowns. No one really knew who Edge and Christian were at that time. At the beginning, I don't even think they talked really. They didn't really have much of a character. Edge was supposed to be like this vampire. Christian was supposed to be his brother. They're not real brothers. They both are from Canada, and they both trained together and worked the indie scene together before they came to WWE. But they're not really brothers. But that's how they were pitched as the Brood, and eventually they would be abducted by the Ministry of Darkness, which was Undertaker's stable at the time when he had his ministry gimmick, if you remember that. And that's how you joined. You would get abducted, and they would be with Ministry for a bit. So they were just kind of just there as this really cool vampire tag team. working for Undertaker. Eventually, they would get kicked out because Christian would get in trouble. I think he got beat up by Ken Shamrock or something, and Ken Shamrock forced information out of him about the whereabouts for Stephanie McMahon or something like that. It was crazy. It was crazy. It's going to be fun when I do my WrestleMania 2000 Let's Plays, because I really get into all that ministry stuff, that Ministry of Darkness and corporation stuff. That's not really represented too much in No Mercy. No Mercy is more of like the McMahon-Helmsley era, which followed after that, which has its roots in the ministry stuff. It's crazy. It's crazy storytelling. Makes no sense when you look back at it. It just really doesn't. But it's funny that Edge and Christian had a small part to play in that. After they left the ministry, that's when they would have their series of matches with the Hardys, and eventually they would turn on Gangrel because they didn't need him anymore. But then Gangrel would take the Hardys under his wing, and the Hardys would be the new brood. And the Hardys were with Michael Hayes before that, so they would feud. They had this series of matches on like Raw, and they started getting noticed because they were very fun, entertaining matches. And then that would lead into the No Mercy pay-per-view, where they would have the Terry Invitational, tag team ladder match. Basically, if you won, you got the managerial services of Terry Runnels, as well as like $100,000 or something like that. So, try to put something up there. They didn't have Money in the Bank yet. They didn't have anything. I don't know why they couldn't just be for like a tag team championship, number one contenders match, but whatever. It put them on the map as being like, oh, we should be paying attention to these tag teams. It's what I love about watching it, and I've talked about this in the Hardys Boys Let's Play, but what I love about watching it, because I watched it again, is the audience not knowing how to react to the match. You could see when the match first started out, the audience is kind of quiet. Yeah, Edge and Christian and the Hardys, they're not there yet. They're not, the tag teams that everyone remembers today. They were just starting to get a lot of TV time together, working together, and they were doing a lot of different things that you didn't see. I talked about my other Let's Plays, the tag team division before this. Before the three of them showed up, Edge and Christian, Dudleys, and the Hardys, it was basically New Age Outlaws and everyone else. So it wasn't really a division. And even when the New Age Outlaws had their titles, and I talked about it in their Let's Play, they didn't really defend it a lot, So it's fun to watch that match, because today we all expect the big spots when we watch TLC matches or ladder matches or Hell in a Cell, whatever. We all expect the big moments, and we're all waiting for those moments. But you look at that crowd; they had no idea what to expect. They were just kind of sitting there watching it, and then after the moves that they were doing with the ladders started increasing in like intensity and pain, and all that stuff, you see the fans just starting getting more into the match, and like, oh my god, what are they gonna do next? Like, this is crazy. Like, who are these guys? That really put them on the map with me. Obviously, I was paying attention to Edge and Christian before them because the Brood had cool music, but that match, along with everyone else in the world, that match put them on the map, and the rest was history, as they would say. So, like I talked about in my Hardys and my Dudleys, I don't want to get too much into it again because there's other stuff I would like to talk about with Edge and Christian. This would lead into the series of matches between the three teams. You would have the WrestleMania 2000 triangle ladder match, with the Dudleys coming over for ECW and inserting themselves into that feud. You would have the SummerSlam, the TLC match, and then, TLC 2, and then finally you would have the WrestleMania 2017 TLC match, which is the final match, which Edge and Christian would win as well, and that would be their last championship reign. It's crazy to think about. From April 2000 to April 2001, Edge and Christian were champions 7 times. The only other champions that year was Too Cool, Hardy Boys, Buchanan and Godfather as part of Right to Censor, The Rock and The Undertaker, and the Dudley Boys. The Rock and Undertaker were kind of an anomaly. It was really more storyline stuff. That's why they were inserted there for a brief bit. But there was a whole division built around these three teams. And Edge and Christian took titles, traded titles with all these other teams I just mentioned. So they were the focal point, I think. They were the glue that held everything together. Yeah, you had these three teams, but I think really it was Edge and Christian because they were the heels. Even though the Dudleys were kind of like the most dastardly, those damn Dudleys, as JR would say. Edge and Christian were the true heels. They were the ones who were really good. They were a really good tag team, but they would cheat to win a lot. They would use underhanded tactics, and you hate. I love characters like that you hate them because you know they're good, but then they cheat to win, so they just become jerks. It's like an Edge and Christian, they were jerks. They were entertaining jerks, but they were jerks, and that was like their whole shtick. It's really funny because I listened to the Edge and Christian podcast, and I remember one episode they talked about tag teams, and I think it's Edge or Christian, or maybe it might be both, but I forgot. It's probably Edge. Says that he really loves tag teams that like look similar. That they have the same outfit and they look alike. And when they were in the Brood, they had more of a similar look. But then when they were just Edge and Christian, they each kind of had their own look. And they didn't have a tag team name. They were just Edge and Christian. Like that was their team name. They didn't have a unifying look. They didn't have matching outfits. So it's funny that they like that in other tag teams, but they themselves didn't do it. But I think that's what also made them stand out. Because you look at a lot of the other tag teams, most of them were that traditional, they're a team, they have a name. The Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, Too Cool, all the APA, even Right to Censor, like all these other teams that were there. Even Test and Albert were TNA, and then they sort of had that look that was very similar. Edge and Christian, they had their own outfits, they had their own designs, they only shared theme music and entrance. And I think it's interesting that they went in that direction, because I think that's what kind of separated them from everyone else. And I think that's cool, and I think that's a tricky thing to do. If you look at, tag team wrestling in general, to have a tag team that isn't your traditional, they look alike. They're Legion of Doom, Demolition, the Bulldogs. Even you look at the tag teams today. You have the Usos, Ascension, Brazongo. They all have this unifying element about them. And Edge and Christian, their unifying element was that they were really good. They were really snarky. And they both just had great chemistry, and I think that's why people gravitated to them. That's why I gravitated to them. At first, the Hardys were my favorites back in the day. I would always root for the Hardys. But, as time went on, I grew to like Edge and Christian more, because of how good of a heel team they were, and how their dynamic pretty much set the pace for everyone else. I think the difference between Edge and Christian and the Hardys was that Edge and Christian could do pretty much almost all the same stuff that the Hardys could do, with the exception of all the crazy stuff that Jeff Hardy did. But Edge and Christian, when they came out, that's not what people were looking for. They were looking for their, funny jokes and their 5-second poses, and how they were going to cheat, and, them dressing up as the conquistadors and fooling the Hardys. And, it was like having two top heels, in one team. You know what I mean? It was like take Ric Flair and split them in half, and you have Edge and Christian in a way. And I make that comparison seriously, because that's how Ric Flair was as a heel. He was a beatable heel. He was a heel that he wasn't like 6'8", this monster muscle guy. He was a beatable heel, but he was a really good wrestler. He cheated a lot. He had a lot of charisma. And that's who Edge and Christian were. Really, they were the Ric Flair of the tag team division. And I think the fact that they only were around for a short amount of time, looking back at it, and that we still talk about them today, we still talk about the Hardys today, we still talk about the Dudleys today, they left a huge impact on that tag team division, and it also set the stage for what they would both do individually in their careers in WWE, and with Christian, outside of WWE. They're both decorated champions in WWE. They're both Triple Crown champions, both Grand champions, both world champions. The only thing, Christian didn't hold the WWE title, but he still held the world title. Edge has won, the Money in the Bank, King of the Ring, Royal Rumble. So they've done it all between them and together. They've done it all. What's also interesting too is Edge is the number one person, he has the most reigns of tag team title reigns. So with Edge and Christian, obviously he's got 7 there. He's also got a reign with Hogan. He's got 2 championships with Benoit, 1 with Orton and 1 with Jericho. So he has 12 reigns himself as WWE World Tag Team Champion. Okay, not the current WWE Raw Tag Team Championship, which is the WWE Tag Team Championship. But as the World Tag Team Champion, he has 12 reigns. Christian has 9. He has 1 with Lance Storm. He has 1 with Jericho. And here's the Hardys right now in the ladder match. Chris Jericho's the only one to have tag team championships with both Edge and Christian, which I think is interesting. And, they left an impact. You could even say No Mercy was impacted by, Edge and Christian and the Hardys, because obviously the game is called No Mercy, and I think it was chosen to be called No Mercy because the real big thing they introduced was the ladder match. That was the big mode. You didn't have that in WrestleMania 2000, and really you didn't have it in WrestleMania 2000 because when WrestleMania 2000 came out, they had yet to have the ladder match. Well, technically the ladder match had already happened by then, but the game was already coming out. The game came out in November. The ladder match was in October. So, No Mercy, they introduced the ladder match, and I think that's why they called it No Mercy, because really that was the thing everyone was talking about. Yeah, you had The Rock and Stone Cold and Kurt Angle and Triple H, and the World Heavyweight scene was really fun at that time as well. But I think everyone was really talking about the Tag Team Championship. So they even influenced this game. How you go from a game called WrestleMania 2000 and then you go to No Mercy. Like, No Mercy's not even around anymore as a pay-per-view. Like, it comes every now and then. But it's not your SummerSlam. It's not your Survivor Series. It's not WrestleMania. You think that's what they would call the next game. But no, they called it No Mercy because of the ladder match. So their influence even to this day, when people think of TLC, the whole pay-per-view TLC expanded on what these guys did when they did their first TLCs. They were only around for a short time, which is something that I'm always, shocked at looking back. I have such fond memories of this tag team division, and it was only really from 1999 to 2000, 2001. That's not a long time, but the impact they made. And I look at today's tag team division, and that's what I hope for. The template is there. It's possible. And I'll talk about that in a bit because even I've heard Edge and Christian talk about it, and other, former tag teams talk about it. But what's also interesting about their short time is, how they were split apart. It wasn't as, I don't think we really remember the Edge and Christian breakup. You know what I mean? Like, I think when you think of tag team breakups, I think the one that always comes to mind is like the Rockers, Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels. And I think maybe that comes to mind is because it's a great example of how one guy catapulted to success and became the best thing ever in WWE, and the other guy just kind of disappeared. Edge and Christian, they actually mentioned one time that, tag teams eventually always have to break up. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I like tag teams to stay together, but they were right. If you look at the history of tag teams, they mostly always break up. And when Edge and Christian broke up, they feuded a bit over the IC title. It was coming off of the heels of Edge winning the King of the Ring, and then the invasion happened, and then there was some rift between Edge and Christian, and they split up, and they feuded over the IC title. They traded the titles back and forth between 3 pay-per-views. It was Unforgiven 2001, No Mercy 2001, which was also a ladder match, alright, ironically enough, between them for the IC Championship, so check that out. And then Rebellion 2001, which was a steel cage. These were the only pay-per-views that they ever fought against each other, was in 2001. Isn't that crazy? But they had a series of 3 matches, 3 pretty good matches. And again, bookending that No Mercy, 1999, Edge and Christian going to, wrestling with the Hardys, and then leading up to No Mercy 2000, where Edge and Christian, they're split up and they're not teaming anymore. Now they're feuding against each other in a ladder match, and that was their last pay-per-view matches where they fought against each other. They would feud a little bit more, but then really after that they would go their separate ways up until around 2000, where Christian would align himself with Lance Storm and Test, and they would be the anti-Americans, and Edge would actually end up winning the tag team title, ironically enough, with Hulk Hogan. So, there's this whole like America versus anti-America thing going on with Hogan and the anti-Americans, but Edge is also from Canada, and he used to team up with Christian. But whatever, it happened, and they fought each other, and at Vengeance 2002, Edge and Hogan defended the tag team titles against Christian and Lance Storm, and Christian and Lance Storm would win. And this was the only time that former tag team, I wouldn't say in the history, but in their history, Edge and Christian, this was the only time where they were on separate teams and they fought for the title, and the title changed, which is really cool. But then after that, you would really get the Edge blowing up and becoming the big star, the R-rated superstar. And Christian was there. Christian was, he wasn't on the top of the card, but I would say he was right underneath the top of the card. I wouldn't really even say he was like a mid-carder. I would say he was like right underneath the top card, because both Christian and Edge were really good workers in the ring, but I think WWE just wanted to have Edge be that big star as opposed to Christian. So again, going back to like the whole breakup not being that memorable, I think it's because at the end of the day, when you look at their overall careers, they both still accomplished quite a lot, and they both still stayed in WWE and did a lot in WWE, just on their own path, which is really cool that they did that. I really get disappointed when tag teams break up, that I really like, and because it's always that, well, one of them's gonna make it. Everyone thinks that. You look at, even when I was doing my tag team Let's Plays months ago, we still had Jason Jordan and Chad Gable, American Alpha, and look how that's going right now. Jason Jordan, for some reason, is Kurt Angle's son, and he's teaming with the Shield, and now he's tag team champion with Seth Rollins because Ambrose is injured. So I guess they just called an audible on that. But I would much rather see Jordan and Gable. And Gable and Benjamin are a good team, but I thought Benjamin coming back, he was going to come back more as a singles wrestler, because I think Benjamin is long overdue for having a big singles run in WWE. When I mean big singles run, I mean top of the card WWE, championship run. He doesn't have to win it. I mean, I would love him to win it, but like, wouldn't it have been cool if he came back and won like Money in the Bank? Whatever, I'm getting off subject. Benjamin does have some sort of history with Edge and Christian, because in 2004, there was a brief reunion with Edge and Christian. They were forced to tag team each other because of storyline against Chris Benoit and Shelton Benjamin. So there you go. It is sort of on topic. And then after that, in 2005, Edge and Christian also teamed up a little bit more. Again, it was more sort of like gimmicky storyline stuff. They still didn't kind of like each other, but they had all this history. It wouldn't be until like really 2011 when Edge started feuding with Alberto Del Rio that they would sort of come back together and be the Edge and Christian duo. But by that point, it was too late, because Edge, he would have this amazing WrestleMania moment, defeating Alberto Del Rio, but then he had to retire the next day because of his medical condition, his spine, and it was it caught everyone off guard. And I think maybe they had more plans to do with Edge and Christian teaming up in a way, but that would sort of catapult Christian's big run, because Christian would defeat Alberto Del Rio for the title. And actually, WWE 2K15 has a great showcase mode with Christian, which I thought was fantastic that they focused it on Christian. Starting from that moment where he wins the championship, and then he goes on to feud with Randy Orton over the title, the one more match. I always wanted to do, talk about the showcase modes. So maybe I'll get back into exploring the showcase modes from some of the older 2K games and do the Christian one. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, again, there's so much there to really look at, even though it's a short amount of time. And obviously their individual careers, their single careers, sort of eclipses the time that they had together as a team. But I don't think you can say that, you know, their tag team, their time together as a tag team isn't as valuable as both their individual singles career, because I think people still hold it in such high regards that it made an impact. It changed wrestling, tag team wrestling as we know it, and it changed at that time. It changed a lot of what was going on in WWE. It pulled a lot of the focus away from the singles division into the tag team division. And I don't know, I always get this sense, and I've talked about this so many times in my tag team Let's Plays, but you know, I still just get this sense that WWE does not want the tag team division to be like a main event caliber division, which is a shame, because I love tag team wrestling. I know a lot of people love tag team wrestling, and I think there's a lot of things you can do with tag teams that you can't do in singles matches. And I think having main event caliber tag teams is just as good for your product as having single, you know, tag team main eventers. And you know, at that time, again, you know, I talk about, you know, The Rock and The Undertaker holding the tag team championship briefly. After WrestleMania 17, you know, there would be Triple H and Stone Cold holding the tag team championships. And this is something I forgot to mention, and I always keep forgetting to mention it. I always run out of time, but you look at after WrestleMania 17, they were like, oh, this is going to be the last TLC match. This is it. This is going to be the end of the feud. Last TLC match. And, you know, here we are with a TLC pay-per-view still happening. But I think what they meant was, like, this was going to be the last TLC match between the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys. But there was one more. There was TLC 4, which doesn't get talked about a lot, obviously, because Chris Benoit's in it. But right after WrestleMania, Chris Benoit and Jericho, they were feuding with Triple H and Austin, and Triple H and Austin won the tag team titles. And you know, they were the two-man power trip. This was coming off of Austin turning heel at WrestleMania 17. And there was a tag team turmoil match where Chris Benoit and Jericho became number one contenders, and they won the tag team championship on Raw. This was the match, the infamous match that Triple H pulled his quad. And after that, on SmackDown, Stone Cold was so upset, he was like, I'm going to put Jericho and Benoit in a tag team championship match. It's going to be a TLC match. So they had this fourth TLC match on SmackDown, basically to try to, like, screw Jericho and Benoit. And it was basically Benoit and Jericho against Edge and Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys on SmackDown. A pay-per-view caliber match. A match for the past year that everyone's been talking about, and here it is on SmackDown, and it's a great match. So go watch that one if you haven't watched it, because it's a fantastic match. And you know, they also did another TLC match on an episode of Raw, I believe, but this one stands out to me because, you know, it's so close to the WrestleMania match. You know, and they were just like, we're just gonna do it again, you know, it's gonna be great, you know. And I think it's maybe because they had just lost Triple H, so they needed something big for everyone to tune into SmackDown. I don't know, but it was the main event. It was a huge thing. It tied into the world champion, you know, and the storylines going on with the world champion and these top main eventers. You know, and you had Jericho and Benoit who would go on and continue with the main event scene, but here was Edge and Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys a part of it, because even the world champion knew, hey, how am I going to get these guys? Oh, I know, I'll have the best tag teams go after him. You know, you look at the current tag team division in WWE, I think there's a lot of guys you can squeeze into that position that can be the top tag teams, but then also be involved with main event storylines. So I'm always thinking about ways, you know, with the tag team, like, I feel like I do this every year, of how you can jumpstart the tag team division and within a year make it this great tag team division again, just like how they did back in 2000. Because really, it was a year from WrestleMania to WrestleMania. Maybe a little bit more than that, obviously, because you start earlier to get the match at WrestleMania. But they built the whole tag team division, and you could argue, and I'm going to argue, that the tag team division right now in WWE is as good, if not better, than the tag team division that was around during Edge and Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys. The only thing separating it is that they haven't been given the spotlight to light the fire under the tag team division. And I also think when they split the tag team division up in the draft, I thought that was a big mistake. I've mentioned this before in my other Let's Plays. I think by splitting the tag team division, you thin out the division and it doesn't become important. And that's why I go back to my theory that I think WWE doesn't want the tag team division to be main event. I mean, you had the New Day on SmackDown. They were the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, and they were stealing the show on the preview matches with the Usos. Okay, and they were easily having matches of the night. You go back a few years, the Usos were doing the same thing with Harper and Rowan. Right when Harper and Rowan were coming up with the Wyatt family. I mean, the Wyatt family themselves as a tag team, the Shield as a tag team coming up, and now they're all main event players. I don't know why they don't acknowledge that the tag team division is a great platform to jumpstart certain wrestlers into the main event division, but also just keep the tag team division there. We look back at great tag teams. If I was a GM and, I wanted my top babyface to get beat up, I'd stick a tag team on him. You're going to face the Steiners, you're going to face the Legion of Doom. You look at all these top tag teams from back in the day, you look at them with main event status because they were main event status, and I miss that. I miss that with the current WWE. I miss, having great tag team matches. I remember one of my last Let's Plays, I talked about how, the WrestleMania 17 TLC match was the last big tag team match in WrestleMania for almost a decade. More than that. We had the Hardys return at WrestleMania in a 4-way, ladder match, TLC match. I don't remember what it exactly was, if it was ladder or TLC. I think it was probably just ladder. But you got to believe that they only did that because the Hardys were coming back. It's going to be interesting what they do this year with the tag team division. I think tag teams right now in general around the world, there's a lot of great tag teams out there, and that's where I kind of get my fix outside of WWE. Obviously you got the Young Bucks. I like that the Red Dragon came in from NXT because I'm pretty sure I talked about them in my last previous tag team Let's Plays. But I think there's just so much you could do with tag teams in WWE. You look at the current lineup. Let's look at the current lineup. You got on the Raw side, you have, the Titus brand. You have Apollo Crews, Titus O'Neil. You have The Miz, Taraj, Curtis Axel, Bo Dallas. You have The Shield, Jason Jordan. The Shield featuring Jason Jordan now. Gallows and Anderson, part of the Balor Club. So these are all tag teams that are like 3 members technically, or they're part of like a faction, right? Which is always cool to have. On this, But then you also have the Revival. You have Heath Slater and Rhino. You have the Hardys, which, again, you got the whole Woken Matt Hardy coming out, and Jeff Hardy's injured, but they're still a team. When Jeff Hardy comes back, he's still going to be teaming with Hardy. Maybe he'll come back as Enigma or something, or another incarnation, And you have Cesaro and Sheamus, which was like the unlikely tag team that got stuck together after their feud, and then now they're like one of the best teams in the division. And right there, just on the Raw side, the Shield obviously has Ambrose, Rollins, and Reigns. Gallows and Anderson, to me, are top guys, even though they haven't really been presented as much, but they were definitely the top tag team in New Japan for a point. The Hardys, obviously, legendary tag team, and Cesaro and Sheamus being himself a world champion. So you have main event caliber people already in the Raw brand, but it's such a divided division just having those people on Raw. With just those teams, you can't really build a solid division around those teams because they're all missing something, and all the missing components are over in SmackDown, because on SmackDown you have the New Day. You have Rusev and Aiden English, which is a newer team that just got thrown together that is actually becoming really popular. Gable and Benjamin, which, obviously was a fallout of American Alpha being split up. And why do you split up American Alpha just to put Chad Gable in another tag team? Ugh, doesn't make any sense. You have Breezango, which was another team that kind of got thrown together, which became their own thing. Harper and Rowan, which have just been rebranded from the Wyatt family to the Bludgeon Brothers. The Usos, which have been around for forever and are secretly the best workers in all of WWE. But I don't think that's a secret anymore. I think everyone knows it. The Ascension, which I think are a very underrated tag team because they were very much highlighted in a great way in NXT and have been very much shadowed in WWE. But I think they're getting to show a different side of them in Breezango that I think is good for them because I think they were being limited with how they were presented in NXT. And I think that definitely showed when they came up to WWE. But now you're starting to see a little bit of a different character with them. It's going to be interesting when they bring in War Machine, because War Machine are basically a souped up version, are basically like the version of the Ascension you want to see, but War Machine has just been doing it better, and they're much presentational wise. I think you can present them in that way that they probably wanted to do Ascension. So that's going to be interesting when they bring in War Machine. Hope I didn't spoil that for anyone, but War Machine's coming. Watch out. Owens and Zayn are now together, which I think that in itself, you talk about main event. The history between Owens and Zayn on the indies, with El Generico and Kevin Steen, and how they turned that tag team feud into one of the most popular storylines outside of WWE the past few years in the indie scenes. They're just going to take it to a higher level in WWE, and they've already been planting the seeds. And the fact that they're together, has already thrust them way back into the main event picture. I mean, if you're feuding with the McMahons, you're main event. And that's what they've been doing with Kevin Owens. And, to see Sami Zayn there with Kevin Owens, you just know it's going to eventually turn out to be Owens turning on Zayn like it always is. But again, that's because you can't have that emotional build-up without the history of the tag team. That's what makes tag teams so important when you want to build great main event feuds. And then you have the Singh brothers also, which I think haven't been utilized as much as a tag team, but you could use them as a great tag team. You also have your NXT teams, obviously. Like I just said, Red Dragon came in, they're part with Adam Cole, and Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. They're a great tag team. You have the Authors of Pain, which have really grown on me. DIY split up when I was still making this Let's Play back in the day. You had DIY, now they're not together. But again, the emotional payoff for that is going to be when Ciampa comes back, attacks Gargano, and ruins his chances as being NXT champion or something. That's going to be great. And again, it all stems from that great tag team that they had. You also have the Kingdom, who I believe are coming back, TM61. Because of injury, they were out, but they're another fantastic tag team. I can't wait to see them, have a great run in NXT. And there's a lot of other guys on the roster that you could probably squeeze into tag teams. So again, going back to Edge and Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys, building a division around them, right? You had 3 top tag teams. You built a division around them. I say you have way more than 3 top tag teams if you combine Raw and SmackDown, right? I like to go off of the SmackDown 6 kind of booking, because I think when Paul Heyman was booking SmackDown, he did the SmackDown 6, which featured a lot of main event tag team matches, by the way, between that SmackDown Tag Team 6, okay? I think that's a great way. It's sort of reminiscent of how All Japan used to do their booking back in the 90s, with having like the top 4 or 5 guys, actually like the top 4 guys that, rarely got beat, and then 5 and 6 were just rotating other top guys, and they all had these great matches, and you built the whole division, the whole organization around them. But I feel like you could do that with the tag teams, but you have to combine the divisions. You can't do a top 6 with just Raw. You can't do a top 6 with just SmackDown. I mean, there's only that much more than 6 teams on each. And again, a lot of the teams I named aren't really teams per se, but they team, and then they're part of other feuds, like the Shield, like Owens and Zayn. You don't see Owens and Zayn going after the tag titles. You don't see them feuding with the New Day or the Usos, regularly for like a tag team division spot. But going back to this idea of building a division, if you take Here's my top 6. It's actually top 5, and then the 6 could be rotating, and I'll explain why. Usos, New Day, Revival, Harper and Rowan, and American Alpha, Gable and Jordan. You could do Gable and Benjamin. If we're going to keep it right now, yes, you could do Gable and Benjamin. But I would say just put American Alpha back together, guys. What are you doing? And then that 6th slot can be Gallows and Anderson, Shield, Hardys, Cesaro, and Sheamus. And the reason why I have all 4 of them, that's technically 9 teams you can build a stellar division around, okay? But the reason why I say the 4 of them is because Gallows and Anderson and Finn Balor, you know, they're going to be the club. I think they're really going to try to emulate the success of the Bullet Club with the club, with Balor, now with Gallows and Anderson, finally. You know, patience is a virtue. Shield, obviously, they're the Shield. They're going to be the top 3 guys, so they're always going to be doing their own thing. They don't necessarily always have to tag team, but you can always insert them when you need to bring the tag team division up. The Hardys, again, same thing. Jeff and Hardy, they've done their time in the tag team division, and I think much like when guys come back like Benjamin, you know, I want to see them have these top of the card runs. I want to see Broken Matt Hardy competing for the championship, you know, the main championship. I want to see Jeff Hardy competing for the WWE championship again. I think that'd be great. You know, I mean, he's on Raw, but imagine if Jeff Hardy shows up on SmackDown and we get Jeff Hardy, AJ Styles. You know, again, you know, they did have a few run-ins in TNA, but wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't it be something with Jeff Hardy against Finn Balor? You know, and again, Jeff Hardy coming out in his Willow gimmick or Enigma gimmick or something like that. And then Cesaro and Sheamus, I think Cesaro and Sheamus could be a good starting out you know, team, but again, that emotional payoff of having a team that has history, and especially with them having history of feuding with each other, forced into a tag team, becoming a great tag team, and then breaking off again. And I think breaking off again in the sense that they're breaking off again because maybe they're feuding for the WWE Championship or the Universal Championship. So that's why I have those teams on, sort of on the outskirts. You could probably put Zayn and Owens there too, but yeah, let's go ahead and put Zayn and Owens. So that's 10 teams. That's 10 teams already you can slot in. 5 that are always there, the constants, and then 5 that are rotating depending on the feuds that you want to do to elevate the tag team division. You still have Curtis Axel and Bo Dallas, The Miz, Taraj, which I guess you can sort of say maybe belong in that tier with Gallows and Anderson if they really step up The Miz and put him in the main event scene again. You have Apollo Crews and Titus O'Neil, okay, the Titus brand. And you can even put Apollo Crews with someone else as part of the Titus brand. Maybe bring in someone else to be part of the Titus brand. I don't know. Put what's his name, Akira Tozawa in there, and have Akira Tozawa and Apollo Crews as a tag team. That'd be great, I think. Heath Slater and Rhino could be great middle card guys for the tag team division. You can have, I want Rusev to be above it, but Rusev and Aiden English, Breezango, The Ascension, the Singh brothers, any other tag team that you bring up from NXT. You know, you can bring up the Street Profits. You can bring up anyone. I mean, there's so much there just waiting to be given that moment, I think. That Terry Invitational moment, just like Edge and Christian had. And it makes me wonder why that hasn't really been put out there. I thought the moment was going to be when you had that TLC match between, who was it? It was the New Day, the Lucha Dragons. Oh man, I can't even remember. I can't remember. It was New Day, Lucha Dragons, TLC. I'm going to have to look it up. It was the New Day, Lucha Dragons, and the Usos at TLC 2015. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. I had to look it up. I actually did a Let's Play on that prediction video. Not a Let's Play, but I did a prediction video when I briefly did my WWE 2K15 videos. I thought that was going to be the moment because when Kalisto did that Salida del Sol off the top of the ladder, that became like the most memorable moment of that year, and Kalisto was voted like fan favorite. And but then, again, they split him off. They put the US title on him, and it went nowhere. And it's like, keep him as a tag team, man. I thought they should have put the tag team titles on the Lucha Dragons and have them chase, have them get it briefly and then lose it and have them chase the New Day. I thought that would have been really cool. I don't see why they can't have that now. And especially when I watch Raw and SmackDown and I watch a lot of these tag team matches, there's no reason for anyone to be doing any of this. and I think that's what separates the tag team divisions now and the tag team division in WWE for the past 10 years to how it was with this trifecta. There was a reason Edge and Christian and the Hardys wanted to put everyone on notice that they were the best team in the world, if you will, even though they didn't come out and say it back then, but that's pretty much what they were trying to do. But also that they were the best thing in WWE. I want to see the tag team division get back to that point. I want to see the tag team division get back to that point where when those guys come out there, they say, we are the best in the WWE. I think with the Usos and the New Day alone, you could do that. But again, you can't just build a division around those two teams on SmackDown because they're missing key components. They're missing the Revival. They're missing Gallows and Anderson. They're missing the Shield, And honestly, especially if you look at the New Day, when I think of the New Day, I think back to a lot of what Edge and Christian used to do. Edge and Christian were more so known. Again, they could do everything that the Hardys could do. They were involved in all the great, TLC matches, ladder matches. But they were the entertaining aspect of the tag team division. You could say they were the only really entertaining aspect of the tag team division because they were the ones who cut the best promos. Hardys weren't cutting, as great of promos as Edge and Christian. And the Dudleys, they had their gimmick, but I guess their entertaining spot was really the tables and putting people through tables, But Edge and Christian, you remember those funny moments, you remember those skits, you remember them teaming with, Rhino and, later Kurt Angle and all these things they would do together as a team. And that's who the New Day are. They're basically the modern day Edge and Christian. And I mean, they have, in my opinion, they have two Edges in their team, both with Kofi Kingston and Big E. You could say Xavier Woods is Christian, and that's not a bad thing because Christian's a world champion also, and I think the New Day are all destined to all have great singles runs and moments. At least I hope that's the plan. I hope that's what they do with them. I mean, they're setting records as the tag team champions, both on Raw and SmackDown, and I hope that at the end of the day, the long-term goal is to set all these records, and then, Kofi Kingston finally wins that Money in the Bank, or Big E wins the Royal Rumble, or something like that, and then we just catapult them to where they need to be. But again, that emotional payoff comes from them being a tag team, and in the past few years, the Usos and the New Day have probably been the only two teams that have made a memorable impact. It's going to be interesting to see, would they ever split up the Usos? I was imagining that the Usos could be elevated to a higher level back when they were teaming with Roman Reigns, and they went and they turned the Usos heel, but they didn't turn Roman Reigns heel. And I think, again, that was a missed opportunity, not just because it's Roman Reigns and, everyone knows the story of Roman Reigns. Everyone wants to turn him heel, and even though the Shield are back together and I love the Shield, I still think there's money on the table for Roman Reigns as a heel, but whatever, maybe they'll do it one day. But it's interesting that they put the Usos as a heel because I think the Usos turning heel reinvigorated their career and put more eyes on the tag team division again, because what they were doing as heels was way more interesting than what a lot of other regular heels were doing. And, the same thing with Edge and Christian. When they turned heel, when they turned heel, that was actually way more interesting than them just coming out and just having these fun matches, because that gave them color, that gave them personality, and you became invested in what they were doing. Just because it's a tag team and you match and you have matching outfits and you have matching attire and you have a sweet tag team finishing move doesn't mean you can't still create engaging characters that people want to tune into and watch. I think another tag team that they could do that with is the Revival. I think the Revival are a fascinating tag team. They're so good at what they do, but I think there's a personality there that, again, they call themselves top guys, okay? We're top guys. I want to see them with top guys. I want to see them feuding with The Shield. I want to see them feuding with Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, but I also want to see them, maybe they one day attack Cena, because they're top guys, you know what I mean? And just have tag teams doing that again. Have tag teams inserting themselves into the main event picture because they think they're the best. I mean, you wouldn't have the Four Horsemen if you didn't have Arn and Tully, or Arn and Ole. You didn't have this tag team that was a part of it. Okay, if you think about that. Think about DX. First it was Shawn Michaels and Triple H and China, but then when Triple H took over, who did he bring in? He brought in the New Age Outlaws. Who did the NWO have? The NWO had the Outsiders. They had Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, who were both, they were both single stars in their own right, but really, they were a tag team. They had the tag team championship. They elevated that title to the main event status and fused with the Harlem Heat and the Steiners. I think that we're missing that right now. We're missing the tag team division being elevated to the main event status, and I don't know why they're doing that. Yes, you have the Shield with the titles on Raw, but they're not feuding with Lesnar. That's the main event, in my opinion, for Raw. You know what I mean? No one's feuding with Cena. None of the tag teams are feuding with Cena. So that's why I'm saying it's going to be interesting with Gallows and Anderson and Finn Balor, because maybe they'll start bringing everything back up to the main event, but you can't do it with just the division split on Raw and SmackDown, in my opinion. Imagine if they split the division when it was Edge and Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys. Imagine if they had the brand split back then. You had Raw and SmackDown, and let's say they put Edge and Christian on Raw, the Dudleys on Raw, then they put the Hardys on SmackDown. It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same. You'd show how thin the division is. Even back then, the division was a lot more slim than it is now. I named 10 teams that can all be main event tag team status. And 5 of those teams you can already squeeze into a main event picture above that. So why isn't it happening? Why isn't it? A lot of people talk about the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks should come to WWE. They should come. Why? What are they going to do in WWE that they're not doing better outside? They're in main event matches when they do Ring of Honor shows. They're a main event attraction when they come to New Japan. They're not booked, usually at the top of the card, but they are when they team up with Kenny Omega, when they're part of the Elite, when they're part of the Bullet Club. Outside of New Japan, everywhere else they go, their main event features. They're wrestling at the top of the card. They come into WWE, who are they going to wrestle at the top of the card of? They don't do tag team main events like that. Young Bucks come in, they win the tag team championship. Are they going to still be wrestling at the top of the card? Are they going to still be main eventing pay-per-views? WWE doesn't do that. And it's a shame, because I think they should. My whole, doing all the research and looking back at the WWE tag team division around this time and doing these Let's Plays really put everything in perspective, where it wasn't that the teams were just great, okay, because they were great, but there's a lot more great teams now, not just in WWE, but around the world, and they're not given, in WWE, they're not given the focus and the time to develop a great storyline that people want to invest in like they did back then. And I think that's why we remember it. We remember it because we're invested in the storylines, and then when everyone eventually branched off to do their own separate thing, the payoff was that we finished watching them grow in this tag team division. And you know, a lot of people want to say like, oh yeah, well, it's not as good as it used to be. Like I think the tag team division now, as it stands, with all the teams that WWE has, and even if they wanted more, they could just look outside and just bring in any number of tag teams that are hot right now on the indie scenes, or in Japan, or in Europe, or even in Mexico. But they are stacked themselves. They're not giving them the time. And just look at the last few pay-per-views. Look at where they've been putting the New Day and the Usos. Look at where they've been putting, you know, the Revival came back one episode of Raw. Where they been? What have they been doing? For a moment, Heath Slater was becoming the most popular guy in the company after, you know, the draft. What are they doing with Slater and Rhino? You know? Even Cesaro and Sheamus. What are they doing? They're just kind of there. They're just kind of muscle, and then they just disappear. But they're not giving them like a hot angle. They're not giving them a hot feud. They're not giving them the chance to go out there and really show them stuff. And then everyone's always surprised when Cesaro and Sheamus steal the show. Oh yeah, did you see that Cesaro Sheamus Hardy's match? Yeah, that stole the show. Yeah, of course, because they're great. They're all great. Harper and Rowan. Harper and Rowan is another great tag team. You know, and this Bludgeon Brothers thing, man, I'm like, it would be that much more exciting, you know, this team coming into Rec Shop, if there was Division and Rec Shop on. You know what I mean? They beat up on Breezango, they beat up on Ascension. Who's next? They got New Day, and they got the Usos. We all know they can go with New Day. I mean, we all know they can go with the Usos as well. But, like, what's different this time around? What makes it exciting? What makes it special? Because at the end of the day, if Harper and Rowan come in and they beat up the Usos for the tag team titles, great. It was probably going to be the pre-show match again. You know what I mean? And it's not to take, like, a jaded stance on it. I'm not trying to be jaded. I'm just saying it's like, this is what people want to see, I think. This is what I want to see. If you want to break up the monotony of single person feuds, tag teams is where it's at. I think it's interesting that WWE is doing the mixed tag team challenge. You know, and the whole gimmick is, you know, one male superstar, one female superstar. And they're doing a whole tournament, and it's all quote unquote fan based, but you know it's rigged. Come on. But it's still tag team, and it's still, you're putting all these main event players into tag team matches, and to me it would be all that more special if when all is said and done, you can go back and look at the regular tag team divisions. You know what I mean? I don't know. I worry sometimes about the tag team division in WWE. It's been stagnant for such a long time, and I worry about a lot of the tag team wrestlers because I want to see them have their moment to shine in an age where, you know, WWE has all this talent and not everyone can be Universal Champion. Not anyone can be WWE Champion. I think you look to your secondary titles, you look to your IC championships, your US championships, but I think also you look towards your tag team championships. I want to see a marquee WrestleMania tag team match again. I want to see a marquee SummerSlam match again. A Royal Rumble match again. I mean, Edge and Christian, the Dudleys and the Hardys, they all had great memorable matches at these premier WWE events, and you just don't see that happen anymore with the tag teams. And I'm just saying, everything's there. Everything's there. They just got to do it. They just got to give them the opportunity to go out there and deliver great storylines. I mean, the whole Usos New Day feud is probably one of the better feuds that has been on SmackDown in the past few months. You know? The stuff that Breezango has been doing has been some of the most entertaining stuff. On the Raw side, you know, again, you got the whole weird Shield Jason Jordan thing, and you know, they're sort of floating around with the Miz Taraj and Cesaro and Sheamus. See, and this is where you go back to, if you combine them, you have a lot more there that you can work with, and everyone can elevate everyone. You can even make more tag teams. I mean, cruiserweight division, they're kind of floundering right now, but maybe when Big Cass comes back, have Big Cass and Enzo Amore get back together as a heel team. You know, put some of the cruiserweights together. You know, put Sin Cara with Lince Dorado, because they always want to put Sin Cara with another masked wrestler. Put Sin Cara with Lince Dorado. Put Kalisto with Grand Metalik. If you want to talk about a true masked tag team that you should have, I want to see Kalisto and Grand Metalik be part of a tag team. And not just in the cruiserweight division. I want to see them in the tag team division. You know, you can even take other guys. In NXT, you got the Dusty Classic, you know, which is great. I love that they do that they focus on the tag teams. But I remember in one Dusty Classic, you had Ty Dillinger and Bobby Roode get together for a brief moment, but then Bobby Roode just left them in the middle of the ring. That was kind of entertaining. But, hey, why not have Ty Dillinger and Bobby Roode actually team up and be that glorious 10 tag team? It doesn't seem that, you know, they brought Ty Dillinger up. They haven't been doing anything with him. Bobby Roode came in as a babyface for some reason, and you kind of see they're just kind of waiting to do something with him. Why not have them be in a tag team right now? And this is why you need a great tag team division, because when you want to elevate your singles competitors and you want to give them something to do for a little bit, you put them in the tag team division. I mean, you think about Edge, you know, and again, Christian had a great singles run, but think about Edge for a moment. Where would he have been able to transform to the rated R superstar, to the Edge we all know, to having, you know, cashing in the Money in the Bank, to feuding with Cena, to feuding with Taker, to feuding with all these Shawn Michaels, all these people, Jericho? Where would he have been before that if he wasn't in a tag team with Christian? If that tag team division never kicked off, if Edge and Christian never get that moment, how would Edge have been able to break through and been taken seriously as a competitor against, you know, a Kurt Angle, a Triple H, a Jericho, a Shawn Michaels? You know, it's much harder sometimes, and it always makes you wonder what would have been the trajectory, what would have been the path that Edge would have needed to take to get there if he didn't have Christian. You could also say the same thing for Christian. You know, what trajectory would he have had to take if he didn't have it? And looking at what they're trying to do now with maybe Woken Matt Hardy, and, you know, even what they did with Jeff Hardy, and when Jeff Hardy became champion, what would have been the trajectory? How would they have been able to do all that they did with Jeff Hardy if they didn't have him in that tag team division and have that tag team division so hot and so notable, so that when people started seeing Jeff Hardy wrestle as a singles wrestler, like, oh yeah, you know, he did all those great ladder matches, of course, yeah, he should be great in the singles division. Same thing with Edge. It's like, oh yeah, you know, him, Edge and Christian, one of the best tag teams. Of course he could be one of the best wrestlers in WWE. And that's what I mean when I worry about all these tag team guys. It's like, I want them to rise, I want them to ascend to be on a greater level, but how are they going to do it if they don't have a great tag team division? So I don't know. It's always a wait and see. It's always like, we'll have to just see what happens. But, you know, I got 3 more tag team Let's Plays. I'm sure I'll have more to talk about this going forward, but that's pretty much it. Here's Edge and Christian, tag team champions. I hope you enjoyed this Let's Play. I hope you enjoyed the footage of me beating people up with one of the best tag teams in WWE history. And let me know what you think. Let me know what you think is missing from the WWE Tag Team Division and what you would like to see going forward with the WWE Tag Team Division, because it hasn't been as good since Edge and Christian were around, right? You know, and I want it to be there again. So let me know what you think. I'm Be Better Gamer. Thank you for watching. You know what to do. You've been on YouTube before. Like, comment, subscribe. And in the next couple of weeks, you'll see my next WWE Tag Team Let's Play. But until then, as always, keep watching all the wrestling. Thank you.